5. November 2nd, 2018, 5 weeks before. Just be yourself, they tell you. Worried about how you'll come off if you're interviewing for something. Just be yourself. Wondering what to say or how to act on a first date. Just be yourself. Looking for the words to describe the impossible. Just be yourself, they tell you, to put you at ease. As if just being yourself is so easy. As if for so many people, it isn't the very thing that most puts you at risk in this cruel and heartless world. I remember getting ready for T-ball on Saturday morning back in Seattle. Maybe I was 8 years old, wearing the little uniform they gave us, going to the bathroom before Dad and I were supposed to leave the house and seeing one of Mom's lipsticks on the sink, and just twisting it open and doing my lips and standing there amazed, looking at myself in a mirror. I was almost too short to reach. From the hallway, Dad shouted, "Liam, are you coming?" I tried to get the lipstick off the toilet paper, but it wouldn't come off. Dad, hearing the faucet running, said, "What's going on in there?" I called, "Nothing." When, of course, it was nothing but everything. Why couldn't I just have come out wearing lipstick? Looked my dad in the eye and said, "I'm here. This is who I am." I mean, I've heard all of these people who did that, who were brave enough to come out at age 6 or younger. So why didn't I have the courage to make myself known? It wasn't as if I didn't know the truth. But I was years away from being able to find the right words for the thing I felt, years away from even seeing the face of another person like me. All I knew was that looking in the mirror at this boy wearing a T-ball uniform, whoever I was, this was not it. I finally came out of the bathroom and my father looked at me angrily and said, "What's wrong with you?" I'd wish I'd known what to tell him back then. I wish I had the courage to say, "Not a goddamn thing." Instead, as years went by, I got better understanding of how deep the trouble was that I was in. I came up with a strategy. If I couldn't live honestly in the world, I figured the next best thing was to do the opposite, to live as if I was invisible. There are people who think that invisibility is a superpower, that nothing would be cooler than being the invisible girl, like in the Fantastic Four, but we're wrong. Invisibility isn't a superpower, it's a curse. "What is going on in that head, Lily Campanello?" says Mom from across the room. She's drinking a glass of Chardonnay. Still wearing her uniform, I look up at her. I've been playing the Schubert Opera Sonata by the fireplace, the piece that I learned over a year ago after I tried and failed to kill myself because, as it turned out, I couldn't even do that right. The piece that everyone said was too hard for me. I guess I'd finished a moment ago and had just been staring into space, lost in thought. "Can I ask you a question, Mom?" I say. "Would you rather be invisible or be able to fly?" Mom laughs. I love the sound of her laughter. It's like bubbles coming up from Sparklet's machine, a water cooler they call it on the East Coast. I haven't heard that sound much since we moved. "Lily, I'm a middle-aged woman. I'm already invisible." In so many ways, Mom acts like her life is over and it pisses me off. It makes me feel guilty too because she spent so much of her life trying to save me. She got us out of Seattle when my father tried to crush me and resettled us in Point Reyes so could do the social transition. And then she homeschooled me when everything went to hell at Point's Crest. She kept me alive after the suicide attempt. She got me to Dr. Powers for surgery. She moved us out here and got the desk job after that. There are times when her whole life had been bailing me out time and time again. I start playing the Schubert once more and do fine until I get to crazy passage toward the end of the first movement. It's like I am doing cartwheels on a high wire. I can feel Mom's gaze. She raises a glass of wine to her lips. When she was 25, she became a ranger so she could spend the rest of her life in the wild. It didn't pay well, but she always said I'd take my paycheck in sunsets. I'm playing so furiously and so hard as I think about her and Asher and Jonah and Dad that all at once the A string on my cello snaps. It's hard, sharp sound, and I jump about a foot in the air. The sound of a sudden snap resonates and echoes in the body of a cello. I'm glad I didn't get hurt once before when I snapped the string. It sliced right through my ring finger. Boris, who's asleep on the floor, raises his head, although it's more likely that this is because I jumped than because he actually heard anything. Lily, says Mom, putting her wine glass down. I go over to the couch to sit next to her and let my head fall onto her shoulder. The ugly tears come in a rush. Mom, I say, do you hate me? What is this? Says Mom. Honey, how could I ever hate you? I wrecked your life, I tell her. Mom pets my hair some more. Is this about Asher? No, I tell her. Yes. Mom thinks about what she wants to say. He hasn't been around for the week, she says carefully, running her index finger around the lip of her glass. I was hoping she hadn't noticed. Boris sighs. It's hard sometimes not to think the dog can feel your emotions, the same way deaf people can hear music through the solar plexus. There have been times when Boris seemed to know what was going on in my heart better than any human, although this happened more often back when the old dog was young. Sometimes I miss those days, not often. I always thought I'd choose flying, I say quietly, but now I'm not sure. Mom keeps stroking my hair. She knows damn well I'm not talking about flying. But if we're going to talk about sex, you're going to have the conversation in code or not at all. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about flying, she says, already speaking the language. Boris puts his head back down. Mom pulls back from our hug and looks me in the eye, wipes the tears off my cheeks with her thumb. Flying's overrated, she says. It absolutely breaks my heart to hear her say this. Did I tell you? I had to rescue some hikers today, she says. I wonder why we are talking about this now. I thought you were doing the paperwork on the bobcat habitat thing. The Lynx Analyst Unit, she says. Yeah, but these hikers got into trouble and the chief sent me in. I mean, there were rangers closer to them than I was, but you know how he likes to give me the worst jobs, just to make sure I know how much he resents my being forced on him. I do know about this. The chief thinks that Mom has an attitude because she used to be a park service. This is a distinction that no one cares about except for the chief, but he wanted to be park service, but he failed the test. You should have seen these two peak beggars up from Boston hiking the AT in shorts and t-shirts. In November, no rain gear, no hiking boots, dead cell phone batteries. They got drenched in a downpour, started shaking with the cold. They have got hypothermia if a through hiker hadn't found them and called headquarters. I wrapped them up in thermal blankets, gave them some soup from a thermos, got them down okay, but geez, you wouldn't believe the situations people get themselves in by not looking ahead, by not being prepared. She looks me in the eye hard, or maybe you would. Suddenly I understand why we are talking about this and what she is telling me, that when I make a decision, I have to understand what the consequences are. The thing is, there are consequences no matter what I decide now, but I'm not sure which one posed the biggest risk. Let's say I tell Asher, listen, I'm trans. I know I should have told you before we slept together, but I didn't. So I'm telling you now because I just want to be honest. The consequence of that might be that he gets angry, that he flies off the handle, that, well, who knows what he'll say. He is a gentle, gentle spirit. But I have seen him angry, and I have worn his bruises. Transgender people get unalived all the time in this country. They don't get unalived because they kept their identity private. They get unalived because someone else finds out the truth. Incredibly, some courts still allow the GAY panic defense or the trans panic defense to justify the killings, as if unaliving another person because they're trans is somehow understandable. Well, we don't approve of unaliving, but really considering the circumstances. On the other hand, let's say I don't tell him, then that I decide there's no reason for him to know because the past is past, period, full stop. I was never a boy anyway, not in my heart, not in the ways that matter the most. Does not telling him everything mean I'm lying to him? Is it really lying if all you're doing is keeping your mouth shut about something that's nobody's business anyway? I don't like either of those scenarios. There's another one, of course, in which Asher says, I don't make any difference to me and I love you. That's the one I want. I'd like to say that the Asher I know will react this way, but do I really know him? What if he has a private self too? Actually, if I think about it, how could he not have a private self? Is there anyone worth knowing who doesn't have something about themselves that is theirs and theirs alone? My mother's staring hard at me. Is there anything you want to tell me? There is so much I want to tell her, but I can't stand the idea of her worrying about me anymore. Her sacrifices and help have brought me as far as she can. I'm the one who has to figure out what to do next. I'm the one who has to live with the consequence of my choices. I'm picturing the conversation, Asher. There's something I have to tell you. Are you okay, Lily? I want to tell him, fuck yes, I'm fine. In fact, I am wonderful. I'm not a mistake. I am a miracle, can't you see? But people never see who you are. All they can see is who you were. I stand up. I'm going down to Eggers. I tell my mother. Mom looks surprised. I have no idea who that is. Eggers, the music shop. We've driven past it 100 times. I need an A string. She drains her glass, plays with her long braid with one hand. In the single moment, I get a glimpse of the younger woman she used to be, the girl who got her forestry degree at Syracuse and headed off to Olympic National Park in Washington at age 25. Thinking her life was about to begin. When you get back, Mom says, I'll be here. I pull into a parking spot on Pierce Street. As I step in, the sunlight bells from the St. Clements are tolling. As I pass by, I can see on its sign that today is All Souls Day. All Souls Day is the day when a mystical portal is supposed to be open between the land of the living and the dead. It started because in the 11th century, a traveler who shipwrecked on an island that contained a chasm. He could hear sounds coming from it and believed they were cries of lost souls in purgatory. Hearing them wail, he decided we need to pray for everyone who's trapped. When he was rescued from the island, the idea spread from there. I've always liked the name, like it's a day for everyone. Is it just some Souls Day? No, stupid, it's All Souls. I'm not very religious, but I know there's something bigger than I am, bigger than all of this. What is this thing? I absolutely do not know. 5 things about the Bible. 5. The only part of the New Testament I can quote from memory is Luke 2, verse 8 through 14, and that's because it's the part that Linus recites at Charlie Brown Christmas. 4. Actually, I sometimes think there's something very Jesus-like about Charlie Brown. His heartbreaking patient, his endless suffering, You have to admit the show would have a very different ending if after he and Linus bought the sad little Christmas tree, the other kids in the Peanuts gang came after them with a hammer and some nails. 3. The thing that contains burning incense in a Catholic church is called a thurible. The rising smoke is supposed to symbolize the prayers of believers rising up to heaven. The word incense comes from a Greek word. Originally it meant sacrifice. It's no wonder one of them, Maggie, brought it as a gift. Gold and myrrh were powerful presents, I'm sure, but the king who fought frankincense to the child knew full well that the world would take its toll. 2. My least favorite Bible verse is the one about Balaam and his talking donkey. Because honestly, who could possibly take that seriously? If your donkey started talking, I promise you that you wouldn't say you'd hit him and tell him he's being a bad donkey like Balaam does. Instead, you would probably exclaim, "Hey, I have a talking donkey. I'm gonna be rich." 1. I keep trying to be an atheist, but it won't take. In spite of how much garbage there is in the Bible, like all the instructions on how to treat your slaves and how women should pretty much accept that you're destined to be the property of men, there is still something about faith I cannot let go of. I do not know what the world is, but I know that it contains miracles that I cannot explain. And the love that people have for each other is the biggest mystery of all. As I get out of the car, I feel another memory trying to surface, something triggered by the sound of the steeple. It's something buried so deep it takes a while to form. I'm remembering a nursery rhyme about the churches in London. It rises in my heart suddenly, the whole thing, the goosebumps prickle on my arms, because the person who used to sing this to me was my father. I couldn't have been 6 years old, but I'm remembering being in his arms back when he loved me. Oranges and lemons, say the bells of St. Clement's. You owe me 5 farthings, say the bells of St. Martin's. I open the door to Egger's Music. It reminds me of the other music shops I've been in, except airier and messier. It's like being in someone's cluttered living room. There are chairs and a pot-belly stove. A guy with a beard is sitting on the stool playing wagon wheel on the Martin. On the right wall are Fender, Strats, and Telecasters, little white price tags dangling on strings tied to the tuning pegs. There are amps toward the front, PVs and Rolands. Toward the back are the drum kits, snares, and floor toms and hi-hats. Over at the counter, a large woman with a bad perm is talking to a customer, and the two of them are laughing like they are old friends. The customer grabs his bag and says, "Dig you later, Lizzie," and the woman says, "Take care, Len," and looks happy at them as he heads toward the door. Then her gaze falls upon me and I freeze, because Lizzie is clearly a transgender woman. Obviously, I have a well-tuned trans radar compared to most people, but you don't need to TDAR to know this woman's history at a glance. Lizzie has big hands and Adam's apple, a large frame, 5 o'clock shadow, the works. She looks at me with a big smile, her face welcoming and bright. "And how can I help you, young lady?" she says in a voice that is both low and unashamed. It's like she's well practiced to being herself and in taking exactly zero shit from anyone. My heart is pounding in my chest. I need a cello string. "A cellist?" she says, impressed. "Any special string, or you want me to pick one at random?" "The A string," I mumble. "One A string. Hold the mail," she says with a laugh, and she turns it back and starts rummaging around in a set of drawers behind the counter. Outside, I can still hear the bells of the church pealing away. "When will you pay me?" says the hells of Old Bailey. "When I grow rich," say the bells of Shoreditch. There's a growl from behind the counter, a sound I expect more to come from Boris than a woman my mother's age or older, and now she turns back to me looking slightly sorry. I don't have the individual strings anymore. I thought I did, but all I have are the sets. She puts two different packages on the glass countertop. I've got the red label super sensitive for $45.99 and the D'Addario Helicore for $134.11 plus the tax. You can take your pick. I'm still trying to find my voice. I don't know. I say hastily, yeah, it's a choice, she says. You have to ask yourself the questions we all ask ourselves. She looks at me hard. What's the question? Are you super sensitive, she says with a grin, or are you a helicore? And now she laughs deeply as if she has just said something hilarious. The guy with the Martin is still singing, "Hey, hey, mama, rock me." A little bell rings at the door to the store, opens, and a dude with a ponytail and a Charlie one-horse cowboy that ambles in. He has a loose walk like he's high. "Yo, Lizzie, what up?" he sings. "Hey, Johnny," says Lily. "It's good to see you." The guy playing Wagon Wheel stops playing. "Hey, John," he says. Johnny takes a look at me and raises one eyebrow. "And who do you have here?" he says. "New girl in town?" He looks down at the counter. "Cello strings, you play cello, honey?" "Yes," I say. I point to the cheaper set. "I'll take these." "You are super sensitive," says Lily approvingly. I knew it. "Is she taking good care of you, honey?" says Johnny. I nod and hand Lizzie $50. "'Cause if she's not, I can take good care of you." He pushes his cowboy hat back on his head. "You need taking care of." "Let's back off, Johnny," says Lily, all business. "All now?" "Oh, I said back off." She looks at him intently and Johnny backs off. It's clear nobody messes with Lizzie in her own store. There might be different rules out in the world, but in Edgar's, Lizzie's word is law. It's kind of amazing how fearless she appears to be, because a lot of the trans people have seem a little apologetic, like they're somehow begging the world for permission just to be themselves. And what I know is that sometimes I'm like that too, because I'm afraid to lose invisibility. "Gee, somebody took some bitch pills today," Johnny says, and heading toward the back of the store, the Wagon Wheel guy starts playing again. This time it's "Dear Someone" by Gillian Welch. He sings as it softly, and I stand there at the counter, my head still spinning. I want to go all over the world and start living free. "Sorry about him," Lily says, handing me the change and strings in a small brown bag. Drummers, they get frustrated because they can't play a real instrument. Lily's makeup is very bad. Her eyeliner wobbles all over her eyelids, and she's wearing too much mascara. I kind of want to point this out to help her, but she isn't the one who needs help. "What do you play?" I ask her. "What do you think?" says Lily. "The cello, of course. Do you really?" "Well," Lizzie says modestly, "not much anymore. We have a little trio that plays weddings bar mitzvahs." "Thanks," I say. "How long have you? Has this store been here a long time?" 23 years, says Lizzie, thinking it over. She gestures to the inventory. "My empire." "It's your store," I say. "You're Mrs. Edgar?" Her face lights up with a big smile. "You are new in town, aren't you?" "I am," I say. "I just moved here in August. 'Cause you'd know otherwise. Everyone knows I was Edgar. Now I'm Elizabeth, "Right," I say. I can still feel my heart beating. "What's wrong, honey?" says Lizzie. "You never seen a trans woman before?" From outside the bells come again. When will When will that be? Say the bells of Stepney. I do not know, says the great hell of Bell. I've known a couple, I tell her. Isn't that something that, says Lily, used to be I was the only one around. Now we're everywhere. The world's gotten to be a little bit better place by bit. Have you been nice to you? She laughs. This is a funny question, nice enough. So what's your name? Lily, I want to say. I'm trans too. You and I are sisters, but is this really true? Are we sisters? Hey, says Lizzie. Are you okay? I'm fine. I walk around the door, my heart pounding. You come back anytime. People like us, we got to stick together. She calls after me, and I'm gripped with fear that I think is hidden might be apparent to Lizzie. I'm not the only one in the world, T-Dar, after all. Celis, I mean, she says. I head outside. All I wanted to do was to be like everyone else, have a normal life. And it's not like being trans is some terrible secret. It's a wonderful thing, really. At times I thought of it as a gift, not being openly trans, whatever that means. Hasn't been some crazy plot of mine to deceive people. It's just been the fact of living every day. Because I was lucky enough to get on puberty blockers and do my transition young. People think I'm cis. They think I'm just like they are. It is really my responsibility to out myself over and over for the rest of my life. What is it in the end that makes me different from cis people at this point in my life besides history? Still, it's different when you're in love with someone. Maybe the whole being in love is that you tell each other everything, even what you don't know what the consequence might be. I climb behind the wheel of my car. The bells of St. Clement's have fallen silent. Asher, I text, can you come to my house tonight? I need to see you. It's 11:45 and I'm lying in my bed holding a book that I'm not reading. I have one light on, the Hello Kitty lamp I've had since I was 6 years old. The book I'm not reading is The Princess Bride, which they made into a movie. I remember my mother reading it out loud to me while I was recovering from surgery a year and a half ago. There are so many things I love about that book, but the thing I love most, of course, is all the sword fighting. It was seeing that the movie when I was little that made me want to start fencing. I love when the Man in Black and Inigo Montoya are fighting all over the rocky terrain, and Inigo is so amazed by Wesley's veracity. Who are you? I must know, he says. Get used to disappointment, Wesley replies. There's also the business about Wesley pretending to be Dread Pirate Roberts. It makes me think about the way people assume identities about all the masks we wear and how often people assume you are exactly what you appear to be. There's a thing about passing, which is not only the transgender people, but everybody. It has to do with the way the bigotry and meanness of the world got parceled out based on how you might or might not look or act like somebody else. The way there's a particular kind of anti-Semitism that gets leveled at people who look Jewish, whatever that means. African Americans with darker skin sometimes are the receiving end of even more bigotry than people whose skin is lighter. GAY men who act GAY get treated one way. There's those who pass as straight get treated another. It's a whole pyramid of bigotry with people who most resemble the dominant culture at the top, and people who difference makes them stand out of the bottom. It's inconceivable if you think about it, the complex ways people come up with for being horrible to one another. Inconceivable? You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. As a trans girl, I passed without much effort, thanks in part to the random luck of genetics, and also thanks to my mother getting me on puberty blocking hormones when I was 12. My body loved estrogen too, which is mostly because I'm shaped like my mother. Big up top, slim hips. And once surgery was done, what was there to make me stand out as different from other girls my age? The thing Dr. Powers has promised me that even your doctor won't be able to tell you turned out to be true. How my surgeon managed to magically make a vagina and CLITORIS and LABIA out of nothing more than superfine sugar and marzipan, I can't tell you. But I know everything looks and feels like it's supposed to. There's a statement someone in the support group once used. The plumbing works and so does the electricity. So what makes me different at this point? A Y chromosome that you can't even see. Is that really the thing that determines the truth of the world? I mean, I can't get pregnant, so there's that. But a lot of women who can't get pregnant. And as it turns out, there are even some women who have something called androgen insensitivity disorder, which means they have a Y chromosome and never even know it. I don't think it's an invisible chromosome or the inability to get pregnant or anything else. That makes people so cruel to transgender folks. I think what they hate is difference. What they hate is that the world is complicated in ways they can't understand. People want the world to be simple, but gender isn't simple, much as some might want it to be. The fact that it's complicated, that there's a whole spectrum of ways of being in the world, is what makes it a blessing. Surely nature or God or the universe in full of miracles and wild invention and things way beyond our understanding. No matter how hard we try, we aren't here on earth in order to bend over backward to resemble everybody else. We're here to be ourselves and on our gnarly brilliance, which is why I feel so ashamed to be in hiding. I ought to be standing in the spotlight on the stage shouting, I'm trans and I'm proud, everybody shout my name. I mean, it's not like there aren't trans and non-binary students at Adams High. I remember how amazed I was the first week of school to see Caden Wentworth stand up in the assembly and tell everyone about the Rainbow Alliance. Oh, I knew that there were plenty of people in the room who didn't get it or couldn't tell you the difference between a transsexual and a Trans-Siberian Railway. But most people seem glad to be in a place where a non-binary person like Caden could just be themselves. There are lots of other queer students at Adams High. Sometimes it seems like over the course of my own transition, the world has gone from a place where trans stuff was exotic and incomprehensible to know just more way of being human. So why is it that instead of joining the alliance at school, I acted like this had nothing to do with me? Why instead of making friends with Caden, Gray, and Ezra, and all the other queer and trans and NB students, did I wind up going out with Asher Fields, the co-captain of the hockey team, a poster boy for cisgender straight men? Is it just internalized transphobia? Is my love for him actually a weird way of hating myself? Inconceivable. The thing is, I already knew what it's like to be outed, to live in a world where everybody knows the most private things about you. Nobody ever threw a pride parade. Time and time again, I got exposed against my will, and the consequences were terrible. It happened at Pacific Day School in Seattle. It happened at Marin Murr. It happened at Point Crest. Each time it was worse. Even at Point Crest, where, thanks to Dad, everyone found out about me and they tried to turn me into the diversity poster child, even there, I wound up humiliated and tortured. That last time at the Valentine's Day dance, my junior year, was the end of the line. The day after the dance, while Mom was at work, I filled a bathtub with water. I got a knife from the kitchen and turned on the sharpener. I can still hear the sound of the blade as I pulled it against the spinning, sharpening stone. I can see the light reflecting off the steel. I can feel the quiet of the house. I patted Boris on the head and I made my way up the stairs. Goodbye, I told him. You're a good boy, which was more than I could say about some people. We won't tell anyone, Mom said afterward when we were getting ready to move east. What's past is past. From now on, it's just you and me. It was a great plan, but there was one thing we hadn't counted on. We never considered what would happen if I fell in love. There's a gentle tap against my window. I look up. He's here. I can tell you from the way he stands awkwardly at the foot of my bed that he doesn't know what to do next. Asher Fields, who does everything with sureness and grace, is completely at loss. He looks at me with what can only be described as hunger and hope all braided together, but he doesn't want to come any closer until I gave him a sign that it's what I want. God, I love this boy. I take a step forward and press myself so close to him that it is like we were carved out of the same piece of wood. I feel like wax molding to him everywhere there is heat. He drops his coat on the floor. We wrap our arms around each other and we kiss like we're on the deck of the Titanic. Thank God, he says. I missed you. I missed you so much. I missed you too, I say, and we kiss again. And I wish I could slip underneath his skin, but he pushes me back until he can look into my eyes. Are you okay? He asks, just like I thought he would. Yes, I tell him, and I am. There's a way in which I feel more like myself when I'm with him than when I'm alone. Maybe deep down I always thought I did not deserve to be loved by someone like Asher. But then again, the thing I feel is not only about him, it's about being part of the world. There is so much ahead of me and I want to put my arms around all of it. I was afraid you had second thoughts, he said. After we know, I tell him, I mean yes. He's listening to me very carefully. Yes, you have second thoughts, he says, about me. Yes, I have second thoughts about myself, I say. Lily, he says, sitting down on the bed, talk to me. I feel my throat close up. I don't know how. He reaches over and holds my hand. Then I'll wait till you figure it out, he says. I squeeze his hand back and I was feeling the tears welling up. But God damn it, I'm not going to cry. I think about Lizzie in the music store. How she was herself and how amazingly that was enough. That was perfect. If what you want, Asher says, is to go back to the way things were before, we can do that. I'm sorry if I rush things. I love you. I don't want you to feel... Stop, I tell him. Asher, being with you, I underline, made me feel like I've never felt before. He takes this in and he breaks into a big smile, dimples. I think fleetly, fuck it. I can just keep my mouth shut and everything will stay like it is. Then why, he asks. I've been losing my mind, I thought. He looks down as if he's afraid to say it out loud. I thought you changed your mind about us, about me. That also breaks me because my body may be different, but the one part of me that has never changed is my mind. Asher, I love you, I rush to explain. I love you so much that even using those words is like saying the ocean water. The ocean's just water. I swallow. But there's something I have to tell you. He sits and waits. Lily, he asks gently. I'm scared, I whisper. I'm afraid that once I tell you, you won't ever look at me the same way again. Asher shakes his head. Nothing you could say would change how I feel about you. Do you understand what we have, you and I? You and me, I don't know. It's holy, I say. Asher thinks it over. Okay, he says. I wasn't going for holy, but sure, holy works. I feel like there's no one else ever known me the way you do, I say. I feel that way too, says Asher. We've been honest with each other, I tell him, and he nods, except that there's something about me you don't know. You're scaring the shit out of me, whispers Asher. Just say it. The room is so quiet. Just say it, he says, often softly. He rubs his thumb in small circles on the back of my hand. It's the kind of quiet like a conductor is standing in front of an orchestra holding a raised baton, and you're just waiting for the music to begin. I'm trans, I say. He takes this in, sort of, then Asher smiles again. Very funny, he says. It's not a joke, I say, a little too loudly, and I think about how my mom is asleep down the hall. What would she think if she knew that Asher was here? What would she think if she knew I was telling him everything? You're what? I'm trans, I tell him. I should have told you before we started going out, before we had... You're trans, he says? You mean like you want to be a man? Seriously? Oh, Asher. No, I say. I mean, I was born. People thought I was a boy. I look like a boy. I had the body of a... He's looking at me with like a bloodhound who's heard someone call his name in the distance, a little bit curious but more confused. Now he lets go of my hand. You're sane? I'm trans, I tell him. Or I used to be before surgery. You had surgery? Says Asher. His face is pale and there is no longer any part of him that is touching a part of me. So when we had sex, you were... Me, I interrupt. I was me. I'm exactly the person you've always known, the person who loves you. But his voice trails away. He's thinking really hard. It looks like he's gnawing on a bone, like he's trying to get to the bottom of something, but it kept slipping away. Then all at once I feel a wave of disappointment washing over him. Jesus, Lily, he looks up at me and repeats my name. Lily, he says slowly, like he's pulling on a sweater that doesn't fit. Asher stands up. He walks over to the window, the same one he came through not 10 minutes ago. Then he walks back to me, staring at me hard, like he's looking for something he couldn't see before. But what, Asher, I say again. He shakes his head. I can't tell if he can't figure out what to say or if he's trying to keep from saying something he will regret. He makes a fist, then his hands go slack. I have to think, he says. Everything inside me turns to ice. Please, I beg. Tears are in my eyes, but it doesn't keep me from seeing what's happening. What I knew would happen. He opens the window. Asher, I cry, walking toward him. If you have to think here, stay here. I reach out my hand to keep him from leaving, and that's when it happens. He flinches. Like my very touch is poison. It feels like he flayed me down to the bone, and it shows on my face. You've known about this your whole life, he says. I've known for 10 seconds. I gotta think. He steps out onto the roof and he jerks his chin and kind of goodbye you give someone you barely know. Someone is an acquaintance, not someone you've moved inside, not someone who loves you, whom you loved. A second later, Asher's climbing onto the branch of the tree outside my window. He didn't even close the window behind him. From town, I can hear a church bell tolling. It's the spire of St. Clement's. It's midnight. The cold wind freezes my face, and I listen to the bells chiming in the distance. 10, 11, 12. And just like that, the day All Souls is done. Olivia, May 6, 2019, 5 months after. The courtroom is so quiet that for a heartbeat I can hear the crawl of my own blood. And then in the next, everything explodes. The gallery erupts in a rush of sound and shock. The attorneys struggle to speak over each other, and Judge Byers is banging her gavel. I ignore all of it. I look at Asher, whose face is pinched and white. His eyes are closed and his hands are clasped on the table. It looks like he is praying or begging for forgiveness. All right, the judge yells. I will remind you, we are in the middle of a trial. If you cannot handle yourselves, you will be removed from my courtroom. She turns to Jordan and the prosecutor. Mr. McAfee, proceed. Jordan's mouth opens and closes around empty air. Finally, he says, no further questions at this point, Your Honor, but we reserve the right to recall the witness. Gina clears her throat. She looks like she's smacked into a wall, a little dazed. Your Honor, she says, we have no objections to the defense recalling the witness. I didn't ask you, did I? The judge snaps. This is a good stopping point. Idris Elba walking into my courtroom right now couldn't convince me to finish out the afternoon. She turns to the jury. We're going to recess for the day. I reiterate my admonition to you. Do not read any media. Do not talk about the case with anyone, not even the people who share your bed, and come back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Court dismissed. The bailiff takes the jury out and the judge retreats into her chambers. Asher's now staring blindly in front of him like the empty-eyed marble bust of an old philosopher. I am in no rush to stand up or go anywhere. I can't imagine what the media gauntlet will be like once I step outside these doors. Gina jams papers into her leather briefcase. Jordan grabs her arm and turns her to face him. Why didn't you tell us this? He demands under his breath. She yanks herself away from Grass. You're assuming I knew. The prosecutor exits through the double doors of the courtroom, and immediately I hear the roar of questions rise over like a tide. Jordan turns to us, waving me through the little wooden gate that separates the gallery from the table where he and Asher were sitting. Don't say a word, he says, and he leads us through a side door into a hallway. At the end of it, I can hear Gina saying something to the press, and with her in the spotlight, we are able to sneak off in the opposite direction. Jordan pulls us into the conference room where we were earlier. He slams the door behind him, sits down at the table, and opens his briefcase. We'll stay here till the media gets bored and goes away, he says. He takes out the autopsy report, scoring it like he is expecting it to burst into flames in his hands. How the hell did we miss this? I know the answer to that. No one was looking for it. People see what they want to see. Asher picks out at the cuticle of his thumb. There's color in his face again. He opens his mouth and closes it, as if there is so much inside of him to say that it jammed up in the back of his throat. He seemed unsettled, but not surprised. I shove the thought away so hard that I feel dizzy. Jordan spears his hands through his hair, making it stand on end. Okay, he says, giving himself a pep talk. Okay, we will figure this out. I clear my throat. Is it really that big of a deal? My brother pins me with a glance. Yes, and here's why. Asher's case just got progressively worse. It's a lot easier to blow holes in a case that is basically a glorified version of Boy Meets Girl. Boy and girl argue. Plenty of couples fight without unaliving each other. What Gina Jewett couldn't offer a jury until 10 minutes ago as why Asher got so mad that he would commit unaliving. But now the prosecution has motive. They're going to say Asher found out Lily was transgender, felt duped by her, then unalived her in a fit of rage. Trans panic, it's in the news every goddamn day. Asher looks up, but No, Jordan interrupts. Do not tell me whether or not you knew Lily was trans. As long as you say nothing about that to me, I can build your defense on my belief that you were never told. And if you were never told, you had no motive to unalive her. Asher very slowly wilts toward the table, pressing his cheek against it, as if all the will to fight has gone out of him. Oh my God, you guys. We wait long enough for the press to have dispersed, and then before heading to the car, I tell Jordan and Asher I'm going to use the bathroom. The ladies' room at the courthouse is on the far side of the building, but I don't pass a single person in the hall the entire way there. I use a stall, flush, and step out to wash my hands. Standing at a sink a few feet away is Ava Campanello. I have not seen her in months since Lily's funeral. She is a stick thin, her dress hanging on her shoulders and swallowing her whole body. She looks up. Ava, I say, hoarse. She jerks her gaze away from me, scrubbing at her hands with the vengeance of Lady Macbeth. Then she turns, reaching for the tongue of paper towel curling from the dispenser. I'm rooted to the floor, trapped by the loss of Lily and the potential loss of Asher. If things were reversed, if Asher had been the one to unalive, would I so badly want to find a scapegoat, a way to burn the world down that I think the worst of Lily? I can't imagine how badly she hurts, how she can hold herself together. I would never presume to know Lily as well as Ava did, but I still cannot see myself believing the worst of her. I would never presume to know Lily as well as Ava did. Jordan might not have known Lily was trans. Gina Jewett might have not known Lily was trans, but Ava did, and she chose to say nothing, not even to the prosecutor who would have interviewed her lengths before moving ahead with the trial. The question is why? It wasn't to protect Asher for sure. Was it to protect Lily? Or was it because this secret wasn't Ava's to tell? Asher isn't an unaliver, Ava. I force out, my voice is wobbling so much it's unrecognizable. You must know that. Sometimes in a hive you find broad cells shaped like circus peanuts, where potential new queens are being raised to replace an old or weak one. Most beekeepers say the first queen to emerge will sting the others still in the cells to kill her rivals, but I prefer to think that she caucuses, running around the hive, shaking hands and kissing babies, leaving her pheromones all over the place. As later queens hatch, they have to challenge her candidacy. It's about persuasion, consensus. Not everything is solved with violence. Ava doesn't turn around, but her shoulders stiffen. Things aren't always what they seem to be, she says, and then she's gone. I run the water in the sink and wash my hands, then I splash some over my face. Finally, I go back to the conference room where Jordan and Asher are waiting. It's about time, Jordan says. What the hell took you so long? I force a smile. Coast is clear, I announce. He gives us our marching instructions in case we are ambushed en route to the truck, but it's unnecessary. The reporters have slunk back into whatever holes they came from. Our vehicle is in the far corner of the lot, baking in the afternoon heat. An oak tree stretches its arm over the truck, casting low shadows on the flatbed. Asher climbs into the back seat, but Jordan can open the passenger door. I put my hand on his arm. Jordan, I say softly, do you think Asher knew? The sun glitz in his eyes, illuminating a flash of sympathy. You better hope like hell, Jordan says, that he didn't. Braden and I met on a blind date that included neither him nor me. I had been set up by a coworker. Her fiancé, former college roommate, worked in the Clinton White House and had suggested we meet at the Tombs in Georgetown. I hated going to Georgetown. It was crowded and full of frat bros and decided out of the loop of the metro, but I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt because who wants to be the woman who nitpicks over the meeting spot? When I got to the bar, I was 10 minutes late because of traffic. But I figured maybe he was late for the same reason. I didn't want to start a tab, so I asked for a glass of water and sat down next to a man nursing what looked like a whiskey. I noticed him in the way that single women notice men, sizing him up for general Dutchness, and I marked his athlete's body, his cashmere sweater, his ringless left hand. You wouldn't happen to be Henry? I asked. Sorry, no. He smiled politely at me and turned back to his drink. When he was otherwise absorbed, I slid a glance in his direction again, this time taking in the black gleam of his hair, the electric blue of his eyes, the groomed stubble on his jaw, which somehow on him looked honest instead of cultivated. He kept checking his BlackBerry. I checked my watch. I finished my glass of water and asked for another, this time with lime. When the bartender brought it, the man beside me raised his empty glass, signaling another. I started to wonder if I had messed up, gotten the date wrong or the time. My missing date had 5 more minutes and then I was going home. Beside me, the man lifted his new glass and took a sip. Please don't spontaneously combust, he said, staring straight ahead. It started a laugh out of me. What makes you think I'm angry? I can feel the temperature creeping up, he says, pulling at his collar, and then he turned. If I thought he was handsome before, he was devastating now. I'm Braden, he said, and who are you? Waiting for a blind date, I replied. I figured he lifted a brow. How late is he? I glanced at my watch. 35 minutes, I said. Braden huffed out a laugh. I got you beat by 15. At that, I nearly fell off my stool. You were stood up too? He lifted his glass, clinked it to mine. I have an idea, he said, leaning close. Let's egg their houses. I'll stand watch and then you can return the favor. I smirked. I have no idea where he lives, right? The blind part of the date. They have to be blind, I said, not to show up for you. My hand flew to my mouth. Did I really just say that out loud? He was grinning at me, his eyes bright. Thank you, Braden said. I think. Guess I've had enough to drink, I muttered. Yeah, 2 glasses of water and under the table, too. Suddenly, a hand squeezed my shoulder. I froze, thinking that it must be my date, and the greeting was a little aggressive. Braden had stiffened, too. A very drunk woman wearing a necklace of plastic pansies and a sash that said, I'm the Bachelorette, had wedged herself between us from behind, draping her arms around us both. Sorry, she slurred. The bartender's been totally ignoring me. Go figure, Braden said. The bartender came over. 6 Corona Ritas, she ordered. Braden looked over at me over his head, and I met his glance. And we both hid a smile, but she intercepted the glance, only then seeming to realize that she was cuddled between us. Oh my God, the Bachelorette sang. You two are the cutest couple. I'm gonna buy you a drink too. We're good, Braden assured. At the same time, I said, I'm not drinking. Her eyes grew huge. You're pregnant? She announced, like she'd just deduce the theory of relativity. She looked down at my stomach. How far along are you? Before I could tell her she was hugely mistaken, Braden said, 3 months. But we want the gender to be a surprise. He reached for my hand on the bar and laced his fingers with mine. His skin was warm and dry, and between our palms it felt like we were holding a secret. Name it after me, no matter what, the bachelorette said. Brenda. Then she disappeared, having gathered up a tray of giant frozen drinks with beer bottles upended in them. That escalated quickly, I said. Considering the fact that you were expecting, I should probably know the name. Olivia, I told him. I squeezed his hand and pulse and started to let go, but he wouldn't let me. Would you like to go somewhere for dinner, he asked. Maybe toss out some potential baby names. We're obviously not going with Brenda. He took me next door to 1789, a restaurant far too chic for my pocketbook. I learned over dinner that Braden was a resident cardiac surgery. I told him that I work in the panda enclosure at the National Zoo. He was delighted. He'd never met a zoologist before. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and asked me to tell him something he didn't know about pandas. Well, I said, what do you know? They eat bamboo. A lot of it, I confirmed. They cost 5 times more to keep in a zoo than any other animal. Also, male pandas do handstands to pee to mark their territory. What about the female pandas? They ovulate only a couple days every year, and a baby panda is 1/900th the size of its mother. We were eating steak and drinking wine I could not afford on my salary, and Braden was gorgeous and charming, and so attentive to me that it took me an hour to realize how rarely I've been on a date where the man seemed to care more about my answers to questions than about hearing himself talk. An hour had passed and I still knew little about him. Your turn, I said. He ordered a second bottle of Cabernet. He'd grown up in Virginia, went to UVA, then medical school at Vanderbilt. His grandfather had died of a heart attack, which is why he became a cardiac surgeon. Tell me something I don't know about hearts, I asked, turning the tables on him. What do you know? He purred. They can be broken. Actually, that's true, Braden said. Broken heart syndrome is a lot like a heart attack syndrome, Wise, but it's caused by emotional trauma instead of heart disease. I realized that through this entire dinner he had never taken his eyes off me. He had never looked at his phone to see what happened to the original date. He treated each word out of my mouth as if it were a drop of water and he was a desert. It was making me more drunk than all the Cabernet in the world possibly could. We were still talking 4 hours later when the restaurant closed down and kicked us out. It was pouring and there were no cabs in sight. Well, I said, this sucks. Does it? The corners of his mouth turned up. I thought every woman wants to be kissed in the rain. I looked at him, matted and drenched, the beautiful man I'd ever seen. Certainly the most beautiful man who had ever made me feel like I was the only planet in his universe. This one does, I said, and then I was in his arms. When he finally hailed a cab and dropped me off at my apartment building, I asked him if he wanted to come inside, and he shook his head and kissed my forehead. I was tipsy enough to not realize until he was gone that although he knew where I live, I didn't have his number or address. I figured that would be that, the best date I never had. The next morning when I got to work at 6 a.m., there was a helium balloon tied to my staff locker. Congratulations on your baby. A note was tied to the ribbon. Are we having a boy or girl? There were instructions to be ready at 7 at my place with my response. And whatever I wear to a picnic in Rock Creek Park. Back then I thought Braden's directives were romantic, not controlling. Back then I thought it was a sweet. Daddy asked me out with the question, boy or girl. Back then I thought the answer was simple. Aristotle was the one who said the largest bee in the hive was the leader of the colony, but because of the time he lived in, he made the assumption it was a king. Even though scientists subsequently saw the same monarch laying eggs, cognitive dissonance allowed them to still assume it was a male because female rulers just didn't exist. In the 1600s, when a Dutch naturalist, Jan Swammerdam, dissected a queen bee and found ovaries, it was the final proof that the king bee was actually female. In college zoology classes, I learned there are plenty of animal species that change sex. It's called sequential hermaphrodism. Clownfish are all born male, but the most dominant one becomes female. Wrasse work in reverse, with a female able to transform her ovaries into testes in a week's time. The slipper limpet, when touched by other male limpets, can become female. Male bearded dragons can change sex while still in their eggs. If exposed to warmer temperatures, spotted hyena females have what look like penises and have to attract them with their bodies for mating. Coral can go from male to female or vice versa. Common reed frogs spontaneously change sex in the wild. In other words, it's perfectly natural, yet it occurs to me that while I studied this phenomenon in animals, I never really considered what it was like for humans. A change of sex occurs in the animal world when it is beneficial to the continuation of the species. I think about Lily and her suicide attempt and consider that you could make the same argument. I want to ask Asher if he knew, if he talked to Lily about this, but I'm afraid to hear that answer. What I know about transgender women comes from the media, from seeing and hearing Caitlyn Jenner and Laverne Cox and Chelsea Manning and Janet Mock. I haven't really thought about what it means to be trans because I have had the luxury of not having to think about it, but I'm thinking about it now. When we get back home, Asher and Jordan head to their rooms. I find myself pacing around the house. I put a kettle on the stove for tea, then stare at the window at the fields. So green and verdant, it really nearly hurts to look at them. The windows are open, filling the house with the smells of grass and warm earth. In the Mud's room, my bee suit's hanging on a hook. I stare at it for a little bit, thinking of the day last fall when Lily helped me make the frames for the year's hives. I remember at that moment thinking that I'd had a daughter. I would have wanted her to be like Lily, but Lily had been born a son too. The kettle in the kitchen begins to whistle, which is good because it breaks me out of my spell. I find a tea bag, pour in the water cup, and watch the steam rise. I sweeten it with honey. If I'm being painfully honest, is this a terrible thing to say? I have not really given any time to understanding what it means to be transgender. I don't actually know any transgender people, or is this trans? Is trans the same as transgender? Is it a transsexual the same thing or something different? I know about clownfish and slipper limpets, but somehow not so much about humans. There is one transgender person in town, Edgar, who is Elizabeth now. The man know the woman who runs the music shop. I've seen her here and there. Adams is so little that you run into everyone sooner or later. People seem accepting of her, but I can't say that when I see Elizabeth, I think of her as a woman like me. She seems, Jesus, I hate how this sounds, like a work in progress, like a subcategory of woman, but even saying that makes me feel like I'm judging when I don't mean to. Still, when I first heard through the rumor mill that Edgar was now Elizabeth, I wondered why go through all of that. Why not just make peace with the body you have? I lift the tea bag out of the cup, wrap the string around the spoon, and squeeze it. Then I throw the bag in the trash. I remember the day Asher called me from the police station. Mom, I think Lily's unalived. There are a lot of times I don't particularly like being female, like for instance the first day of my period every month, every year since I was 11. The way men look at my breasts instead of my face. The times I've been slightly psychotic about my appearance, my figure, the assumptions that I'm the weaker sex instead of the beekeeper who can lug a 40-pound box across several acres without breaking a sweat. All the times I've had to live up to the standards of men and had to remind myself that those standards are bullshit. I hate that being female is equated with being frail, and yet I'm proof of it. I let myself become Braden's victim because of messaging I received my whole life, that it was my job to take care of my husband, and that if something was wrong, it was because I'd somehow failed my job. I'm ashamed to admit it, but there are times, even as a feminist, when I brought into seeing that as my role. For all these reasons and others, I've even thought of life as a woman isn't exactly a party. I cannot imagine a man actively choosing to give up that winning ace. So what Lily decided she wanted to be a girl? Maybe that's wrong word, decide. It's not a thing you do on a whim, like changing your hair color or learning Italian. But it's impossible for me to imagine so off-kilter with yourself you crave such radical change. Then again, I remember when I was married, how I would step out of the shower and wipe the steam away from the mirror and think, today is a day I see someone strong, but every time it was always just broken, spineless me. I had wanted this cup of tea to settle me, but the more I think about all of this, the more restless I become. I walk up the stairs with the teacup in my hand and I knock on the door to Asher's room. When he doesn't answer, I open it. He's lying on his bed with his eyes closed and headphones on. From the sound of his breathing, I can tell he's asleep. On the wall, not far from his bed, is the hole he punched a day last fall, and which he never did around to fixing. He was going to get it during Christmas vacation. He said, but by then my son was in jail. Well, I said, I hope whatever's pissed you off is worth what you're going to spend repairing that. Now I stand there in the doorway with a cup of tea, examining my room in the same way I once looked at the dioramas in the Smithsonian. Here, the bedroom of the adolescent Homo sapiens when the specimen is in a state of repose. I want to wake him up and tell him, Asher, it's going to be all right. I swear God in that I understand. But what if it's not all right? And what if I don't understand? Moments later, I'm back in the mudroom putting on a light jacket. I get in the truck and start driving to town before I even realize where I'm headed. If you want to understand something, you first need to accept the fact of your own ignorance, and then you need to talk to people who know more than you do, people who have not just thought about the facts but lived them. I can't even call Elizabeth on an acquaintance. I know she has a job and a store to run and a life that doesn't involve educating me that I am at best an annoyance and worse than audacious impassion from someone privileged. She owes me no time, no answers, no tutorials, but 10 minutes later I pull into the parking space in front of Edgar's Music. From far away, we would look like two women pausing to watch the sunset. The sun dissolves in the ribbon of Cobbleskogan River as Elizabeth and I stand with our hands on the railing. On the opposite bank are the ruins of the old paper mill shuttered these last 20 years. A coal smokestack points into the sky. Elizabeth is smoking a cigarette. What an eyesore, huh? She says. She takes a deep drag and then blows it out in a thin blue cloud. My father worked on the log drives back in the 50s and 60s. She shakes her head. The Cobbleskogan used to be jammed with timber. My old man spent a lot of hard days with the pike and his ring dog. We've been here for about 5 minutes now. When I approached her counter at the music store, she made it clear she wasn't at all thrilled about talking to me. I'd introduced myself, but she interrupted. I know who you are, she said coolly. The store, which was filled with the sounds of people playing guitars and stunning basses, I fell silent. Please, I said to her. Miss McGaffey, she said, and thoughtfully, I don't need to please you. She turned away from me. I backed off, not sure what to do. But then halfway the door, I stopped. My son is not a bad person, I said. Elizabeth puts her hands on the countertop before her, a case containing harmonicas and maracas and tambourines. I know all about your son, she said. No, I told her. You don't. She stood there for a long moment like cowboys in a gunfight, just eyeing each other. Then I walked out the door. A bell rang softly. I stood in downtown Adams wondering what to do next, wondering why I'd come here and what I expected. Miss McGaffey, said a voice behind me. She was standing there in a yellow jacket, pink skirt. The look of suspicion was gone from her eyes, succeeded now by something more like curiosity or pity. A look I've seen before years ago. A look that made me feel even smaller, more foolish. You're right, she said. I don't know your son. What's a ring dog? I ask her now, and we stand by the river and she crushes the cigarette butt beneath her heel. It's like Peavy, she says, a hook for rolling logs over. She smiles. My father's house was full of antique tools, all the things he'd need for undoing the jams on the river. Maybe I should get one, I tell her. I'm in a kind of jam myself. She thinks it's over. The sun is about to disappear behind the hulking silhouette of the old mill. I know what it is like to have assumptions made about you without anyone bothering to get the actual facts. That's why I'm standing here giving you the benefit of doubt, although the nightly news suggests that your son unalived a trans woman, Elizabeth says. Thank you for talking to me, I say. I met her, she says. That girl Lily, she came in my store one time to buy cello strings. I don't know why, but this catches me by surprise. Did you talk about, for some reason, I can't bring myself to say the words out loud, what you have in common? Elizabeth says. You mean how we're both? She leans closer, lowering her voice. Capricorns. My face floods with heat. I just thought since you both were born male. I was not born male, Elizabeth says. I was born a baby. I spent my whole life fighting my way to truth. She glances at me. Lesson 1. AFAB and AMAB. Assigned female at birth, assigned male at birth. Or better yet, trans man, trans woman. So you both born, I correct quietly in my voice, transgender. Lesson 2, it's not a curse word, you speak up. A lesson 3, you know what they say if you met one trans person, she smirks, meet one trans person. What's true for Lily might not be true for someone else. I nod, filing this way. Did you get I say. Lily had the operation, Elizabeth says. I can tell from expression on Elizabeth's face that I have asked the wrong question. See that, she continues, would be an example of something that's none of your fucking business. I'm sorry, I say, I didn't mean. What difference would it make to you if I told you I'd had it or I had not? Some people don't want the surgery. Other people can afford it. Lesson 4, accept and nod. Jesus, I can't believe in 2019 I'm still talking about this bullshit, she mutters. We're all different and we all experience gender in different ways, even if we fit under the umbrella of being trans. As opposed to cis, which is what you call someone who's not transgender. So trans is the cis, this GAY is the straight with me so far. Being GAY or straight, says Elizabeth, is about who you want to go to bed with. Being trans or cis is about who you want to go to bed as. She lights up another cigarette. If you got a bunch of transgender people together, you might hear them arguing about what it all means or what the most important thing is all about. There are cross-dressers, often straight men who dress as women as part of fantasy or escape. There are drag queens and kings who think of gender as a performance of an art. There are non-binary people or NBs who see gender in a spectrum, which it is, and want to express themselves anywhere along the spectrum as an act of freedom. Sometimes people call the gender fucking or gender queer. If you hear someone reject the gender binary, you're probably hanging around the queer person. Some of us like Caitlyn Jenner, she smirks. Some of us can't stand her. Some folks are like me. Have a deep sense of who you are and want to be in a medical transition, so don't. Sometimes people know it from what their children, like Lily. Other times the light switches a little later. I know transsexuals who transition in their 70s. Transsexuals, I repeat. She grimaces. Well, someone my age uses the word, but it's kind of going out of fashion, to tell you the truth, because that word makes it sound like it's all about sex, which it's not. It's about fitting into the body you live in. I wonder if it would be like forced to wear size 2 clothes when you are size 12. You wouldn't be able to move comfortably, you know. You'll always be aware of the fact that something pinched, that there would be wardrobe malfunctions and embarrassment. When you thought people were looking at you oddly, you'd be thinking constantly about taking off the outfits just so you could breathe. But if you're trans, that too tight ensemble never comes off. When did you know? I asked. I was 10, but I never came out until I was 45. Now I'm 67. I had been better maybe if I came out when I was young. Like Lily, she finished her smoke and crushes the cigarette beneath her shoe. I'd probably been a lot happier, although who knows? She gives me a piercing look. Maybe I've gotten killed like she did. My son did not kill her, I say, a reflex. You know this because I know Asher. She glances at me just like you knew Lily. There's a truth to the words that makes me freeze. People tend to see the default and present it. Instead of the complexity of the truth, the gamaged teenage girl, the charming cardiac surgeon, the innocent son. Elizabeth shrugs. Somebody unalived her, she says. And the way she says this gives me chills, but if it wasn't Asher, then who? Dozens of transgender women are killed every year, especially trans women of color, and that's only the ones who we hear about. So many others are unalived and thrown away, like their lives meant nothing, like this wasn't someone's child, someone's friend, someone's lover. She looks at me carefully, uncertain whether she should go on. A lot of time it's the people who are supposed to love these women who get violent. On the day I married Braden, if someone had told me that my prince would become a monster, I never would have believed it. I would have said no. It is the direction in which the fairy tale goes. But there is a vast canyon between who we want people to be and who they truly are. We fall into silence as the sun disappears behind the ruined paper mill. For a moment, it's a lot darker, the park falling into shadow. Then the sun bursts through the windows on the mill, lights everything up again on the colors of the goldenrod and rust. Elizabeth looks at her watch. I can't be away from the store much longer, she says. Code 4, we're done here. Can I ask one more thing, I say? Did you know Lily was trans? That's not the right question, she replies. The question is, why would anyone care? My son would care, I say, if I knew. I mean, you really think it doesn't matter if she kept such an important secret from him? Maybe, Elizabeth says, you need to think about the difference between what's secret and what is private. I want to tell her that those are the same things, but maybe they're not. I think about the history with Braden. Is what happened between us a secret in the way that the nuclear codes are secret, or is it the private in the way that painful as the facts are? This is history that belongs to me, and mine is to reveal. Elizabeth leans forward on the railing, balanced on her elbows. Miss McGaffey, do you know what made me come out here to talk to you? To help me understand? No. Because I have a son too. I blink surprised. Does he go to school in Adams? He'd be in the late 20s by now, Elizabeth says, looking toward the distant bank. But I haven't been allowed to talk to him for over 15 years. His mother told him I was unalive. But father, you're not unalive. Depends on who you ask. Her gaze falls upon slowly flowing river. To be trans in this world means being a risk, she says. That's true whether you're out or not. Everybody in the town knows my story, and people are most likely nice. Not everybody, but most likely, because they know me. But when I leave town, when my trio plays on somebody's wedding or something, people take one look at me and figure it out. I mean, I'm 6'4". I weigh nearly 300 pounds. My voice, she looks a little sad. Well, I'm not exactly a soprano. You should see the looks people give me when I walk into a restaurant. Doesn't take more than 5-10 minutes before everybody's whispering, elbowing each other in the ribs. Hey, check out the freak show. If I were in a bar and Elizabeth walked in, I'd probably look up at her. I'd probably draw all kinds of conclusions about her that had little to do with truth. So why wouldn't Lily keep her business herself? Asked Elizabeth. She was exactly what she wanted to be, pretty young girl. She didn't go through the whole transition in order to have an asterisk next to her name, a footnote, pretty girl, but she wanted to be herself. Is that really so hard to understand? Wife, I think, battered. If you choose to carry the asterisk, Elizabeth says, you get it coming and going. There's all the shit you catch from being trans, and then there's the shit you catch from being female. Sometimes when I'm walking home by myself at night, I hear footsteps on the sidewalk behind me. When I'm driving a car alone, getting tailgated by some asshole, I can't really remember what it was like not to feel vulnerable. I have a sudden flash of a bee suit hanging from the hook in the mudroom. I look like it's part of a job caring for the hives because it says beekeeper in the same way that turned around collar says priest, but I also like it because I'm wearing it. I feel invincible, like no harm can possibly come to me. It's not feeling a woman gets very often, whether she's trans or cis or anything else. From down the sidewalk, we hear a pair of voices approaching, two teenage girls from the sounds of them. But then I think, what does it mean to sound like a girl? Is it pitch? Is it resonance? Is it the words themselves? Is it the whole idea of sounding like this and something we all just came up with random in order to separate people from each other? The girls pass us now, talking to each other and whispering. They're about Lily's age, or the age Lily was before she unalive. I'm sorry, I say, for ambushing you, I offer, not bothering to know all of this before today. Take your pick, I shake my head. I just wanted to understand Lily better. You just have to open your heart, says Elizabeth. I think my heart's pretty open, I say defensively, but even as I say, I wonder, is it true? Miss McGaffey, says Elizabeth, maybe you could open it more. At this moment, the girls, now receding down the walkway along the river, burst into laughter. Did you see that? Says one girl. Oh my God, says the other. How similar does someone have to be to you before remembering to see them first as human? We don't say anything as we ascend the path back to Temple Street. A few pedestrians pass us by. The time I was aware of Elizabeth gets from strangers. Some of them look at me to see if I'm like her. Something in me wants to tell these people I'm like Elizabeth. I am like Lily. I'm like a lot of women in the world who choose to conceal something. We live in fear of what might happen if the exact wrong person ever found out. That's the end of chapter 11.